In the last video, we made quite a bit of mess. So welcome back to another video. If you didn't see the last one, go and check it out. It was pretty epic in terms of taking apart the whole front end of the car. There were parts everywhere, there was coolant all over the floor, we had wires and sensors disconnected all over. But the main reason for that video was to get access to this little guy here. This is the positive crankcase ventilation unit, or the oil separator. Not the PVC unit that I mentioned multiple times in the last video. PVC is something you wear on a weekend, as we all know. This is the positive crankcase ventilation unit. Essentially, it separates the oil and gets rid of the fuel vapors in the oil from the crankcase. One of the reasons I want to replace this, as you might have seen in the previous video, I was asking the question why my oil smells like fuel. And one of the theories I had is that this unit was failing, and actually it wasn't separating the vapors from the oil, and that's why the oil smelled like fuel. I've since realised that's probably not the case, and I do have a new theory of why my oil smells like fuel, and I will be looking to rectify that in a future video, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in this one. But this unit is a unit that's common to fail on these cars and will probably need replacing at some point in the near future, so I thought I'd replace it anyway. But while I'm in there, I'm also going to redo a recent recall by Audi, which was to replace the turbo oil seal. Underneath that little oil seal there's a check valve. And this check valve is also known to be a point of failure at certain times. And for whatever reason, Audi don't replace this when they do the oil strainer seal. It's literally a £20 part, it's not huge money, and it just pops in. So, you know, for the sake of £20, I don't know why it's not done as part of the recall if it's known to be another issue. But anyway, enough rambling. So today's video, we're going to replace this. We're going to fit a new one of these to the intercooler unit. We're going to have a look at these parts, and we're going to see what parts are used to basically replace the turbo seal and the check valve and all the gaskets and O-rings that go with it, and how much I've paid from Audi for these parts. And then hopefully we'll get a better sense of what needs to go back together in the next video, because there's a hell of a lot of things that have been taken apart. So come on then, let's crack on with it. So let's take a look at all of the parts I've had to buy to do these two jobs, the PCV unit and the oil strainer ring again. So these parts are all basically bought from Audi, so this is a genuine Audi invoice. So I'll go through each part one by one. Some of the prices are actually fairly reasonable. Some of the prices I just think, Jesus, really? For that? But we'll go through it, and I will put the part numbers in the description box as well, or in the comment box, just in case any of you want to do this as well yourself, you want to attempt this. So first up, the oil strainer seal. So this is the culprit for killing the turbos. It's a little oil strainer seal, and the old ones would get clogged up. They'd block the flow of oil and kill the turbos. So for whatever reason, you get two as part of this. So this oil strainer kit was in total £6.17. So not too bad. Cheaper than killing the turbo, I guess. The check valve, however, that goes underneath that is this little part here. That sits right underneath it. So this part, I did say it was about £20 before. It actually wasn't £20. It's £37.44 from Audi, but still less than a £40 part. And you know, you're future-proofing the car to make sure that the turbos definitely don't get strained of oil. So while they change these seals, I don't know, sorry, not seals, these little strainer rings, I don't know why they don't just chuck one of them in as well. But anyway, we're going to replace that today. So the reason I'm redoing the recall from Audi is because they didn't put one of those in. The next thing you need is a new gasket for the oil plate. So this is the gasket. Now I was a little bit disappointed that when I got this from Audi, it wasn't even in any kind of protective wrapping. It was just shoved in that bag to get bent and battered. So I've had to be careful it doesn't get damaged. But that new gasket was £13.01. I don't know where the 1 pence comes from. What else have we got? Seal rings. So these tiny little rings here that go on one of the oil lines were £7.70 for two. So nearly £8 just for these two little tiny O-rings. So next up we've got two more O-rings. So these are two more turbo oil line O-rings. So these were £10.90. So these were £5.45 each per O-ring. Again, in my view, that's pretty expensive for a little O-ring, but there you go. Next up, we have hose clips. So a lot of these intake pipes have one-time use only clips. So there's two different types, smaller type and a slightly larger type. Not quite worked out what pipe these are off yet, but we'll get to that. I'm losing one. So those were £4.60 for two and £2.70 for two. So I think the smaller ones were £2.70 and the slightly larger ones were £4.60 for two. So around about £8 for the 4 clamps there. Now the final thing I bought from Audi were these gaskets here. You see those? So these are the throttle body gaskets that need replacing, and they're £20 and 4 pence each. So £40 just to replace those 2 gaskets that connect the throttle bodies to the top of the intake manifold there. I think it's the intake manifold, well, the unit on top, the throttle body box on top of the cooler. As you can tell, guys, I'm no Audi technician. I don't know the names for all the parts. I just know how it comes apart and goes back together. So those were all of the replacement components that I need to put the car back together. There were 2 other things that I bought, but I didn't actually buy them directly from Audi, but I bought them from Audi on eBay, but picked them up from the Audi parts store. I don't quite understand why that is. So this was the PCV unit. So this was, I think it was just over £100 I paid for that, but from Audi it was around about £150, £140. But as I said, I bought it on eBay, brand new, from the Audi eBay shop, but still picked it up from the Audi parts store when I went and got the rest of these goodies. So I saved myself about £40, £50 by buying it on eBay. Still brand new. The same applied for this little thing here. So this is, I think it's an oil feed sensor, but basically this plugs in the side of the oil plate and connects. So this is another bit that's worth replacing while I'm in there, because this, if this sensor failed, it would screw up all that oil flow. I think it's to do with oil pressure basically. But essentially you'd have to take apart the whole engine, so I'm going to replace that while I'm on. Again, I got that on eBay, but brand new on eBay off the Audi eBay store for £16. There were 2 other parts that I bought, but not from Audi. I bought them online, genuine Audi parts, but online because they were much cheaper than Audi. These were the last 2 gaskets. So slightly different shaped gaskets. These are for the whole charge cooler unit. Basically it's the gaskets that go around that seal the airflow back into the engine from the air intake. So they were quite expensive from Audi. I managed to get them for about £20 cheaper from another parts store online. But essentially, all in all, the parts I purchased directly from Audi came to a whopping total of £160 and 75 pence, including VAT. That were for all of these parts here. And that gives a grand total to do this job, just in parts, at this. So there you go. Quite a lot of money's worth of parts there just to do the job, but the labour saving will be astronomical. So I wouldn't really like to think what Audi would charge to do this job, even just to replace this unit. Some of you guys out there may know already, you might have paid it. If you have, drop a link in the comment box. Anyway, enough talking. I've got quite a bit of work to do. So the first job up, get that unit on the bench and plug in this new one. Come on. Okay, so this is the unit itself. At the top we've got the charge cooler, so you've got 2 coolant lines here that flows coolant through here. This is part of the throttle body, so the air comes through the air intake, through the turbos, out the turbos, through these pipes here, into the charge cooler, gets cooled by the coolant going through. It then comes down and back out of these 2 intakes through and into the engine. And at the top we've got 2 separate ports, which is where the positive crankcase vapours go through this PCV valve unit. They get separated from the oil, and then the vapours come back through these top holes here and back out and into the engine. So I'm no mechanical expert, that's roughly speaking how it works. If I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments, but this isn't a tutorial video on how these bad boys work. This is me just replacing this part. So I'm going to cut to a little time lapse and I'm going to put this new unit in, and then I'll check back with you in a few seconds. Well guys, good job put this paper down, because we've got coolant leaking out of the charge cooler. I could drain that first before I start moving it around. Right, attempt number 2. You just need to take out these two T25 torque screws. There's no need to take off this clamp. The unit's kept in place via a clip at the back and these orange rubber seals. For this left screw I needed an extension, but this one might have been a little bit overkill. Whoa! And there you go guys, just like that. She's off. Dirty beast. So it wasn't too hard, there was literally just two screws, two T25 torque screws at the back of the unit, and then the rest of it's just held in with these O-rings. That was the struggle you could see there, pulling out was just the O-ring seals. It does smell fuely, but I guess you'd expect it to smell fuely because it does separate the fuel vapours from the oil. One thing I didn't show you on camera, and I forgot to do this before I stripped the engine apart, is when the engine was running, if I twisted the oil cap and tried to lift it, I might have a video of this somewhere actually, I'll clip to it now. When you tried to pull the cap, there was quite a lot of suction. Now, usually that's a sign that the PCV unit is failing. However, someone did comment on one of the RS6 forums that that's a normal amount of vacuum for these engines. I'm not too sure, so I'll be curious to see when we put this new one on, how much vacuum we have when we fire the engine up and try to take the oil cap off. So I will show you that in another video, and I'll compare it to the clip I've got on my mobile phone from previously to what it looks like once we've got a new one in. Okay, so I'm just going to give everything a little bit of a clean and then we'll get that new part fitted. So that's the unit all clean. I've given it a good wipe down with some engine degreaser, certainly around the mating surfaces where those gaskets are going to seal this air intake. But the next thing to do really is just slot this new unit in, and it's basically just the reverse. You've got these rubber seals that just push in, and then there's two screws that keeps it in place. So we'll do that now. If I can work out which way it goes. So you've got these two here, they just go back in these bits. And I think it's just push to clip. That's it, the back bit clips in. Just make sure that seals in tight. Perfect. Now we'll pop these two screws back in now. Boom, and just like that, all done. So for such an easy thing to change over, I can't believe it's such a big job. Audi's dug it right down deep inside the bowels of the engine. You have to completely strip it over to do it. But anyway, it's done now. Next job, replace the dreaded Audi Turbo Killer. Come on. Right guys, so we're back in the engine bay. First job I'm going to do is just take off these turbo intake pipes to get a little bit more space, and then I'll show you what the plate looks like and the screws that we're going to be removing to get access to that check valve and the little oil strainer. I'll check back with you in a second. There we go guys, I've just taken the first one off. I've chosen to leave all of these hoses connected still, rather than break the one-time use clips and have to spend like £4 or £5 per clip to get it replaced. So that just will now move over out the way there, so we've got more access. Right, let's take the second one off. Okay, and that's the second one off. So now we've got access to the turbos, it's a good time just to check the turbo internals and just see if those turbines have any play in them. Fingers crossed they don't. If they do, then we might have to upgrade the turbos to even bigger, faster ones, betterer ones, but at great expense. So hopefully, let's find out together now if they're okay. Fingers crossed. So checking the first one. Spins nice and freely. There's no play up or down or back and forward, that's good. Check the second one. That's spinning around nicely. And there's no play back and forward or up and down. So we've got good turbos. That's a win. Right guys, so the next job is to disconnect a couple of these oil feed lines from the turbos. There's 2 coolant lines that might need undoing as well. Possibly one. If I can get away with one, I'll just do the one. Then we can take the screws out of this plate, take the plate off, and we'll have a look and see what it looks like underneath. So we've got a couple of T30 Torxes and some 5mm Allen head screws to do. So we'll undo these, we'll get the oil lines off, and I'll bring it down and we'll have a little look. So let's see if we can pull these oil lines out. Probably going to make a little bit of a mess, but we can clean that up. Well, that was easy enough. There we go guys, that's one. Come on, pretty easy. I'll give this a little bit of a clean up and then we'll do whatever the pipes are. I think they're oil return pipes. These little hose clamps here to get these pipe off, and plenty of tissue ready because there's oil going to spew out all over. That might not do actually. If it's a return line, it probably won't. Find out in a second. Right guys, I can't get into the clips because there's a sensor in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sensor off just to get a little bit more access, and I should be able to take the clips off then. There we go. Now I should have access to get those clamps off. That was just in the way there, so I couldn't get in with the clamp pinchers to take them off, but should have plenty of room now. So that should go back on easy enough. Okay, let's crack on. Why did Audi put the clips facing the opposite way to where naturally you'd go in with the hose clamps to get them off? It baffles me. Right guys, I think it's nigh impossible to get those oil return pipes off, the rubber pipes, while this plate's still in place. So I'm going to loosen the screws on the plate, bring it out a bit and see if I can pop them off that way, because there just isn't enough room to bend them and I don't want to damage the pipes, because otherwise that's just another expense. So we'll try it that way. So apparently all these screws, when they go back in, they're torqued down to 9 Newton meters. I will double check that and verify that. That's just the information I found on another YouTube video. But all the screws that I've taken out just now are all 9 Newton meters of torque. Oh, that one was tight though. Right guys, last screw. And and then we can get this plate off and have a look at it on the bench. Some of these screws definitely feel like they've been torqued down a lot more than 9 Newton meters, because there's variation in every one when I've been loosening them. Which is interesting considering Audi supposedly were the last people in here. And I'm sure they've got really nice, expensive digital torque wrenches. There we go, guys. We'll have a good look at that in a second. Oily. So there is just one more electrical connection here, this sensor, and this is the one I mentioned earlier that I'm going to replace as well. So we'll pop that clip off and then we'll take this to the bench and have a little look at it, and we'll see underneath if the oil ring actually has been changed. Place your bets now in the comment box. Did Audi actually replace this oil strainer? Right guys, so we're back at the bench. Let's have a look at the plate and see what it's all about. So this is the oil plate that I've taken out. You can see that's where the Turbo Killer oil strainer filter thing goes. This is that precautionary extra sensor I'm going to replace as well, just while I'm in, but that's not the check valve that I'm talking about. You can see that's what the plate looks like. It's pretty grubby, so I'm going to give it a good clean before we put it back in. And then the gasket that comes with it, it's a metal gasket. It's got quite a bit of crud on the outside, to be honest. So I'm going to give the engine bay a bit of good clean before I put the fresh parts back in. But the big question we've all got, and the big question you want to know is, did Audi actually replace that strainer when apparently they did as part of the recall, and that's what it says in the paperwork? Should we find out? Place your bets now in the comment box below. I've got the strainer here. Yes, it looks like they did. That looks pretty clean. In fact, it's really clean, and it looks exactly the same as the newer part number I've got for the replacement. So well done Audi, never doubted you. However, what they didn't replace is the little check valve. So let's go and have a look at that now. Let's take it out and we'll bring that over to the bench and have a look. Alright guys, so this is the check valve just here, that little thing there, and that sits just below that seal ring, that strainer ring. So we'll pull that out now with a pair of needle nose pliers. We'll take it off the bench, we'll have a proper look, and then we'll put the new one in when we put everything back together. I think this is how you do it. There we go. Like a surgeon. Right, let's take to the bench. And just like that, we're back at the bench. So this is the check valve, guys. You can see it looks pretty ugly and discoloured compared to the new one. That's probably from all the hot oil from the turbo passing it, which is probably normal. But anyway, this little valve here, I believe it opens and closes depending on the amount of revs that you put on. So when it's idling, it restricts the amount of flow of the oil. Again, I'm not an Audi expert, I'm not an Audi technician, so don't take this for gospel, but it basically opens and closes. And if it doesn't open fully, when it needs to open fully, then that restricts the oil and that kills the turbos also. So as well as this little strainer that can get blocked and stop the flow of oil, this can also malfunction and stop the flow of oil. So we're going to replace this and then put a new one of these in again. Come on then. Oh yeah! Right guys, so that's that unit clean, and I've just put that new sensor in as well. The last thing we need to do is put in our new oil strainer ring. So we'll get one of the 2 brand new ones that were sent as part of the little package. So this is the old one taken out that was recently replaced. This is the new one, basically exactly the same. That goes in first, and then the gasket goes over it. Right, let's get this back on the car. Right guys, so we're back at the car now. It's time to start and put everything back together, for this top part anyway. So I've cleaned the mate and surfaces the best I can for the bottom bit here and the plate. There are a few marks that just won't come off, so I'm hoping that that's not going to be an issue and the gasket's going to seal it tightly. There's only one way to find out really, so we'll just have to put it back together and go with it. The first thing I'm going to do is just put in this new check valve that I mentioned earlier. So that goes in. I don't think it matters which way these little bits point. That's just the way it was. What I'm going to do is just dip my finger in this oil and just put a tiny little bit of oil around that O-ring. That seal there. And then I'm just going to pop it in, send it home. It was, I think, yeah, it hasn't got any. No, I think it just goes straight down and pops in. So we're going to put it down just like that. There we go, she's in. Right, put the gasket down now. Fresh gasket, give it a kiss. Please don't leak. And pop that in there. And I've cleaned the plate, the bottom of the plate's all clean. We've got our new oil strainer in there, and we've got our new sensor. I have no idea what that does. I'll leave a description here. So we're going to put this plate down now, gently over the gasket, and then we'll start and position the screws in place. Actually, the first thing I need to do is plug this sensor in. It's currently hiding beneath the GoPro. Right, that's in. Right, let's position this plate back, and I will screw this other sensor back in once the plate's in position. Careful not to damage the gasket. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to line the gasket up and the holes up perfectly. You just get it all positioned, so I'll do that now without talking to you guys, and then I'll put the screws in. We'll get them down hand tight, and then we'll go through the torque in order of the screws. There's about 11 I think to do in total, and you've got to do them in a certain order. So we'll get this all lined up, we'll get the screws in, and then we'll torque them down. I'm just putting a few screws in place loosely, and then just giving the whole plate a wobble and a wiggle just to get that gasket lined up nicely in place. It's looking pretty good now. Right guys, so I've got the gasket back in, it's all lined up. I've put all the screws in and I've tightened them down finger tight. I've now got the torque spec and the torque order on my phone in front of me. I'll put the diagram of the order just here. This is the diagram I'm using. I got this off another YouTuber. You'll notice there's an extra 10 on the diagram and it misses step 7 out, so I'm just going to guess which one's step 7. I think it's the bottom left corner. To me it's the obvious one, so we'll go with that. Right, let's get to it. And that's number 11, all torqued down to 9 Newton meters. It's a bit of a strainer on the back, that one. Right, so the next job is start to put most of this back together. I think oil lines next, oil return lines, put that sensor back in, make sure everything else is plugged in properly, and then we can start putting the intake pipes back onto the turbos. And then hopefully that's that bit complete, and then we can put the PCV unit back in, get all that plumbed in right, and then the only thing left to do would be to put this whole rad pack back on. But that's going to have to be the next video, because I'm going to need a couple of parts from Audi to fix this water leak, this coolant leak we've got. Once I've done all this, I'll show you the coolant leak in all of the pipes and where I think it's coming from, and I'll show you the rusted, corroded pipe that's going into one of the side radiators, which definitely would corrode through probably within the next few months, if not the next year. It's absolutely manky, so I'll show you that. But first, let's crack on, and we'll put this back together, hopefully in a methodical reverse order to how we took it apart. Let's crack on. Okay, so the next thing we need to install or reinstall are these turbo oil feed lines. I did buy new O-rings from each end, and because they were rather expensive, I'm going to replace them anyway. These ones look pretty good, and they were probably only changed, you know, like several months ago when this job was last done, but because I bought them, I'm going to put new ones anyway, and then at least we know there shouldn't be any leaks. So I've just taken one off just to make sure it is the same. That's the one I've just taken off, and that's the replacement, so we're good. Just going to spray a little bit of silicone lube on here, because nobody likes to put anything in dry. Boom! Sorted! Right, let's get these bad boys back on. And these are just 9 Newton meters as well. Back on with the turbo intakes. Right guys, I think we'll leave it there for this video. We've managed to get the dreaded Turbo Killer oil strainer replaced again, but this time with a new check valve underneath it. We've put in that new sensor, we've put the new gasket in, we've cleaned it all up, we've put it back together, we've got the turbo induction pipes back in. I will show you quickly the coolant leak that we've got down here and where I think the culprit was, and we'll order the parts from Audi this week and get them in ready for the next video. So in the next video we'll get this plumbed in, back together, and we'll fix that coolant leak and hopefully get the front end back on as well. So I'll bring you down now, let's have a quick look at this coolant leak. So as I mentioned in the last video guys, the coolant leak is just a small little pipe, and it's just one of those reusable clips, one of these clips like that, and it's actually that one there, that rusted one there. So for whatever reason that clip has either lost its clippageness, its springiness to keep that nip tight enough, or the pipe's damaged possibly, but that to me was where the coolant was leaking. There has been a new water pump replaced again by Audi, so I would have liked to have thought new clips would have been put on, evidently not. But anyway, that clip there needs replacing. I might put like a Jubilee clip on that because it's going to be easy to get to loosen and tighten. And then these are the gasket seals I mentioned earlier. So these all need replacing to put back in that PCV unit. And then we just need to make sure we can get everything plumbed back in properly, because there's a lot of coolant pipes that I've taken off here all around for various different reasons to get access in here and in here. So once again, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We've got a lot more work to do on the RS6, as you can see, and we've got a lot more content to be making as we continue to upgrade the car and just future-proof it in terms of maintenance and reliability. So as always, thanks for taking the time to watch. Give the video a like, thumbs up, share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.